God. I pray you're all doing well. I pray that the Spirit of God is filling you and that you are striving on your journey as brothers and sisters of the faith, conquerors, servants, and soldiers alike. I want to talk about a news story I actually read yesterday and how it relates to me and how we need to be prepared for the increasing darkness that is falling upon our society. The story was about a teacher in the UK who was fired for walking into her classroom and saying "Good afternoon, girls" to a classroom at I believe, an all-girls private school. Now this classroom I believe they were middle school age, because it says they were 11 years old, and that's either elementary or middle school. No, it's like 6th graders, I guess. So that's middle school. And these young middle school girls took issue with her greeting the class with "Good afternoon, girls." And some of these kids protested and stated the fact that not all of them identify as females. This is the madness that has fallen upon our society. You know, us as believers, we understand, especially those who are in the Word, Romans chapter 1, after a succession of judgments, such as sexual, homosexual, and now we are witnessing a society who has been given over to debased minds, to corrupt minds, but we can't help but to be baffled by such madness. And so this teacher would go on to be fired. These students demanded an apology. I'm not sure if they were given one, but she was ultimately fired for greeting a room full of girls with "Good afternoon, girls." Now, I experienced similar things as a teacher here in Florida, and this would ultimately be the second teaching job that I was fired from. I wasn't fired specifically for misidentifying, so-called misidentifying students by their genders or whatever. I too was working at a private all-girls school, and I'm going to make a separate video on why I was ultimately escorted from the building. But in this video, I just want to talk about some of the struggles that I went through because of this madness, and how, you know, I don't know if this teacher is a Christian, but I know she must possess some sense, because we know what girls and boys are. Okay. Mankind, since the beginning, since God created the man and the woman, has known what makes a girl and what makes a boy. Up until about the last 3-4 years, when we lost our minds, we knew what it was, and there was no question. But things have changed dramatically, and I experienced some of these things. And I just want to share with you a couple instances that I too went through as a teacher, but not just a teacher, but a Christian teacher. If any of you have been following my videos, I have shared with you an instance where there was a meeting where all staff meeting, and we would do these weekly briefings on girls. This was a school for troubled girls. The school is called PACE Center for Girls, middle school and high school girls. And we would be briefed on new students who were coming in weekly, because they had gotten in trouble, they had been experienced trauma and abuse, and so we were briefed on these girls weekly, and it was really heart-wrenching to work at this place, because it's unbelievable how some parents treat their children. And so anyways, we were in a meeting, and we were talking about a particular student whom I had grown to, who was a middle school student, I had grown to have a rapport with. We started off with issues for a very similar reason when I first started there. And it really threw me off. Basically, the student walked in, she's sitting there, and usually she was a troublemaker. But on this particular morning, she was sitting in her chair and doing her work, just being quiet, wasn't, you know, causing chaos in the classroom. And so I made the comment, "Oh wow, you're a changed woman." And she said, "Excuse me?" I said, I said, "You're a changed woman. You're sitting there and, you know, doing your work." And she said, no. She didn't say anything. She got up and walked out of my classroom. And I'm standing there confused. Like, what just happened? And some of the students were like, "Oh, she goes by a boy," or it was like she was in a middle stage of, she was like, I assumed that she was a woman, or that I called her a woman. She was offended by that. And this was the first time I had ever heard or experienced anything like this. Mind you, I moved to Florida, what, 2018, I believe? What is it, 2023? 2019 I moved here. About a month later I got the job. So this is around 2019 that I'm first hearing about this. And so, you know, we had to have a meeting and this and that. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know that this was a thing. And so anyways, after that, we would go on to have a rapport. And so here we are about a year later. And the way the school works is, because they're troubled girls, there's a side with therapists and counselors. So at any time, if these girls are triggered, like the incident with this particular girl, we can call a counselor. Every teacher has a walkie-talkie. We can call the counselor, or they'll just get up and walk out, and we have to call the counselor, because this is an eyes-on facility. Some of these girls have tried to harm themselves, and so they have to be under constant watch. So as soon as they storm out, we call over the walkie, everybody hears it, and somebody hops on the situation, so that the girl can be constantly eyes, you know, on her. And so the head counselor has called a meeting to inform us that this particular student, mind you, this is a year later, has decided to start the process of transitioning from a girl to a boy. Again, a middle school student. And we are told that her parents are supporting this. We're told that her psychologist has encouraged this, and she's going to be starting the medication, and that we need to, not only her name's being changed to a name that we understand to be generally a male name, as names go in our society. I'm not going to say the name. I want to protect this student's identity. And that we also were told that we need to, from here on out, address the student as a male. Nobody said anything. I'm sitting there like, well, you know, I'm just listening at first, but you know, my heart begins to pound because I know I have to say something about this. But I listen, and they're going on and on. Well, one particular lady who, funny, I was witnessing to this lady on the side because she was a Jehovah's Witness, and so, you know, trying to have a conversation with her and show her things in scripture that contradict her beliefs, because she's using the same Bible I use with a few slight changes. But this is the same woman is here telling us that we need to listen to the experts on the matter. You know, they're like, you know, I know this is hard, but we really need to listen to the experts. They know what they're talking about. This is the best option for this student. This is the best, you know, way to support this student. And, you know, we need to be, you know, supportive and understanding. And I'm hearing all of this, and I understand we need to be understanding towards people, compassionate towards people. But what threw me off is she's telling me that we need to listen to the experts. And that's when I had to step in and say, you know, excuse me, I will call this student a different name if she's changing her name. There's not really a huge deal about that. I will refer to this student as the name that her legal guardians are okay with changing it to. I said, but as far as experts, I take my understanding, my guidance, and my knowledge of this life and of this world from the one who created this world, the one who created this planet and the people who inhabit it. I said, so I'm not going to refer to a girl as a boy because that's not true. And see, my issue is, you can be a non-believer and understand with any common sense what a boy and a girl is, biologically speaking. But as a Christian, the Word of God says that God is a perfect God. He's a holy God, and He makes no mistakes. The Psalms tell us that He knits us together in our mother's wombs. Excuse me for a second. Oh, pardon me. He knits us together in our mother's womb, so He knows exactly who is on His planet. You know, if there are billions and billions of stars and He calls each one by name, then this student has been knitted together in her mother's womb just the way that God has created her and desired her to be who she is to be on His planet and in His ultimate plan of redemption and judgment. He doesn't make mistakes. And so for me to ignore that and to go by what your feelings tell you are, is me calling my God a liar, and far be it from me to ever question the character or the wisdom of God. I just will not do that. And so I voiced this. And there were other Christians in the meeting. And one other one, after I had said something, was like, yeah, I don't think I can do that either. That goes against my belief. And mind you, I'm the only male in the building. Staff and students, obviously, because it's an all-girls school, but I'm the only male in the building. And so I had to speak up. And that was one instance. It didn't cost me my job, but they were like, okay, well, we can understand that. I'm sure we can come to some sort of, I'm I'm like, I'll call her by the name she wants to be called, but I'm not addressing her as somebody she is not. Okay? She has never once stood in the shoes of a man. She is not wired the way a man is. So, being a middle school student who doesn't even fully understand what womanhood is, there's no way I'm going to support this nonsense. We've forgotten about puberty. We've forgotten about all of these confusing times of a young person's life where they're trying to figure out who they are as a person, as a young girl or a young boy. But we do not have the right to redefine things that have been defined by the expert, who is the true expert, who is infallible and without error. We don't have the right to redefine those things, being creatures who are fallible and who often make mistakes. We don't have that right. We don't have the authority. And no man can usurp the authority of God. So I wasn't with it. Didn't cost me my job, but they were like, you know, okay. It cost me some, you know, it made things very awkward. You know, when you're known as the Christian, they don't invite you to lunch when the staff's getting together to have lunch. You know, and that's fine. There was another incident. I had a student who avoided my class altogether because they knew I wasn't going to address her by her pronouns. It's a different student. But there were times where, you know, we'd be short on staff and certain classes I'd have to take. You know, a teacher would call in sick, and so I'd have to take extra classes or extra students from this teacher's class, and so she would find her way in my class. And she wasn't hostile towards me, but she knew that I wasn't going to go along with whatever it is that she had been brainwashed to believe. I wasn't going to address her as a boy. This is an all-girls school. I know what a girl is, and I'm just not. You know, you get the point. So she's sitting in my class one day, and we're having a conversation, and there are students who are kind of like bringing up the topic, but probably trying to instigate. Once they found out Mr. Bryant wasn't going with it, they started like doing little things to try to get me in trouble. So they brought up the topic. There's only like 3-4 girls in the classroom, including the student. And they start talking about neo-pronouns. Now, I had ever even heard about neo-pronouns. And like, you know, this student was like, the one who goes by he and him. It was like, oh, also I need to be addressed as, instead of saying herself, I need to be addressed as snake self. Now, I hear this. Now, I'm a professional, so I can't just laugh. But my people, hear me out. That is ridiculous. Snake self. So, I'm like, okay, I didn't know that these, you know, neo-pronouns are, you know, like, yeah, Mr. Bryant, yeah, there's, you know, if you feel like you're connected with cats, and or you know, feel like you just resonate with cats and love cats, that you can go by cat self or this and that. And I'm like, so to the young lady, I'm like, she's also in middle school. So why snake self? I just want to hear her explain it. And she's like, well, you know, I like snakes, and I really feel like I connect with snakes. I feel like I understand snakes, and so, and I'm like, okay. And I don't say anything. I leave it there because, you know, if one thing has taught me, if I've learned one thing in this life, you know, working in a ER, in the ER emergency room in a hospital for 10 years in Hollywood, Anybody knows anything about Hollywood, California, it can be a very strange place. There's some real characters. So working in the ER, you know, you'd often get people coming in here who were, you know, just a few sandwiches short of a picnic. And you learn, I learned early on that, you know, when you're in the face of insanity, you just kind of let them talk, no matter how crazy it seems, because you don't want to escalate the situation. You want to be compassionate. You want to understand, okay, this person has a mental illness. This person is sick. But when you're talking to them and looking at them and they're very sincere in their insanity, it can make you feel very uncomfortable. It's almost like like it kind of shakes you up a little bit. And I had gone through this time and time again, working in the emergency room and in the hospital. So as I'm sitting here listening to this student tell me these insane ideas, I just got here to work. I'm starting to get this same feeling. Very uneasy, because she's very sincere. And I'm like, what is going on? Where am I? These are kids. How is this happening? And so prevalent. I mean, not only were the majority of my students coming out as a part of the LGBT community and homosexual, even though when they first got there, they were talking about their boyfriends. And they're being peer pressured to be a part of it. And I just remember, you know, I didn't feel like I came from high school not that long ago, 2001, I graduated, but the peer pressure was a lot different. It was about, you know, maybe smoking a joint or something like this. But now I was witnessing peer pressure to join the LGBTQ. It seemed like a gang or a clique. And if you weren't a part of it, like, you were bullied. And it was very strange. And I was constantly having to defend students and send students out of class and let them know, no, we're not talking about any of that in my classroom. Unacceptable. And I became, you know, that teacher who, oh, Mr. Bryan he's a Christian. He's homophobic. He's transphobic. He won't support, you know. And so the students would kind of gang up on the bus ride to class, to school in the mornings, and plan to get me in trouble by changing all of their pronouns. It'd be, you know, I'd have a student come in and be like, you know, they were plotting on the bus, Mr. Bryan, so just be warned that, you know, because I had some students who, you know, were down with me. They're like, just be, you know, I'm just warning you, Bryan. They've all decided they were going to change their pronouns, and if you didn't honor it, you know, they were going to report you and try to get you fired, because they said you don't respect this particular girl, the girl who was calling herself Snake Self and himself and he and him. They were like, so they all planned to change their pronouns just to get you in trouble, just to make you mad. And so just be, you know, I'd get warnings like this from students, and I'd have students walking out of my class protesting, oh, you don't support this, and just walk out. You know what I'm saying? And it was just a bizarre thing. And these instances, you know, I became known as I was going to hold my ground. This is what I believe, and I'm not going to, you know, and I was always respectful, loving, and compassionate. I loved these girls, even to the degree that they were like, Mr. Bryan, why don't you ever yell at us? Why don't you ever curse at us like the other teachers do? And I just wanted to, my mission there was to show them the love that they weren't getting at home, to show them the love of Christ, a love that they just couldn't understand. And I was still met with assaults, insults, spitting, things thrown at me, okay? And I dealt with this for 2 years until ultimately I was, putting in my notice, but God was like, no, this is not how this ends. You're not going out this way. And so it ended differently. These instances were just straws that would eventually turn into the last straw that would break the camel's back. It wasn't an issue of gender, but I'll get into that later. So I understand to some degree what this teacher has gone through. It's insane. We need to understand that things are going to get uglier and stranger and even more insane as God gives us over to our own corruptness, the corruptness in our hearts that we don't understand because our hearts are desperately wicked and we are incapable of knowing them. But we're going to be given over to this so that we get a real understanding of who we are as he pulls away his restraining grace. Brothers and sisters of the faith, pray for those being persecuted for the faith. Pray and stand firm and be in that word and do not compromise. They are bullying all of us in a sense. They're acting as tyrants if we don't go along with these new ideas, these strange ideas, these ideas that make no sense and contradict the word of God, that contradict the definitions given by God. And so just a warning and an encouragement, and just, again, I don't know if this teacher was a Christian, but, it's really sad that things like this are happening in our world. And it's happening here in the U.S. as well as apparently in the UK. So it's a real issue, and it's very, very tragic. So pray and stay in the word. May God's saving grace and peace be upon you.